In the dimly lit royal chamber, Queen Camilla sat on her velvet throne, her sharp eyes glinting like polished steel. The air smelled of old books, candles, and a faint trace of rain from the storm outside. She held in her hand a slender, ornate blade, the Camilla Blade, known to be forged centuries ago and rumored to reveal the truth whenever it sliced through the air. The stories whispered that it could cut away even the deepest lies. Pratt stood before her, trying to steady his breathing. He wore a look of false confidence, but his eyes darted nervously between the queen's hand and her weapon. He had come to the palace on a mission, to charm the queen and convince her that his stories were real. But his tales were woven with half-truths and deceit. He had always relied on his wit and his charm to get out of sticky situations. But this time, the queen's reputation for honesty and justice made his stomach twist with dread. The queen raised her head and spoke, her voice calm, but filled with authority. Pratt, she said, each syllable cutting through the thick air. You stand here in my court because you have tried to deceive my people. Your words are wrapped in charm, but your intentions are poisoned. Tell me the truth now, or the Camilla Blade will find it for you. Chris shifted his weight from foot to foot, his hands trembling. He thought back to the stories of this blade, how it could reveal every hidden secret with just a single slash. He could almost feel its edge cutting through the lies he'd wrapped around himself like a warm cloak. "My queen," he began, his voice cracking. "I never meant to—" But before he could finish, Queen Camilla lifted the blade and pointed it at his chest. It gleamed with an unnatural light, as if it had absorbed the glow of the moon. Her eyes locked onto his, unblinking and cold. She could see the hesitation in his posture, the slight tremor in his lips. The blade sensed it too. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, sending a shiver down Chris's spine. The queen stood, her presence larger than life. "Speak now, or the Camilla Blade will cut through your lies." He gulped, sweat dripping down his forehead. I might have exaggerated some details, but it was for the good of the people. I only wanted to—" The queen raised an eyebrow. "For the good of the people?" she repeated, her voice low and dangerous. "Or for your own gain?" Chris's heart pounded in his chest like a drumbeat. He felt as though the walls themselves were closing in on him, pressing the truth out from the shadows. He opened his mouth, but before any sound escaped, Queen Camilla stepped forward, her blade slicing through the air in a single, graceful motion. A shimmering arc of energy spread from the tip, illuminating the room in an otherworldly glow. The blade hummed as it finished its path, and Chris felt a sharp pain in his chest, not from the blade itself, but from the way it seemed to pull the lies straight from his soul. A vision flashed before his eyes. Every false promise he had made, every lie he had told. They unraveled like threads in the wind, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. Queen Camilla lowered the blade, her expression unreadable. She had seen the truth now, as had everyone else in the room. Pratt fell to his knees, his charm and his stories no match for the queen's unwavering justice. The chamber fell silent, the air heavy with the power of truth. And in that silence, the Camilla Blade gleamed, its work done, at least for now. Pratt knelt on the cold stone floor, his breath ragged and shallow. The queen's court watched in hushed silence, each noble's eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight that seemed to dance across the walls. Outside, the storm raged on, thunder rolling like a warning drum. Queen Camilla lowered her blade, its glow fading but leaving behind a sense of finality. She stared down at Chris, her gaze sharp and unrelenting, as if daring him to lie again. "You have been given a chance to tell the truth," she said, her voice low but firm. "Do not waste it." Her words cut deeper than the blade itself. Chris's mind raced, searching for any scrap of an excuse that might save him. But the Camilla Blade had stripped away the layers of charm and lies, leaving only his trembling heart. His lips quivered as he spoke. I wanted to be a hero. I thought that if I made myself look stronger, braver, more important than I really was, people would admire me. Maybe they'd even love me. I never meant for things to go this far." His voice cracked, and he lowered his head in shame. The queen took a step closer, her long cloak brushing against the polished floor. Her eyes softened just a little, like a mother's eyes looking at a child who'd made a mistake. "You wanted to be loved," she repeated. "But love built on lies is a fragile thing. It shatters at the slightest touch." She raised the blade again, but this time not in anger. Instead, she held it out in front of her, its surface reflecting both Chris's face and her own. "This blade has revealed your truth, but it is also a blade of mercy," she said. "It cuts through lies, yes, but it can also cut away the guilt and shame that poison the heart. If you wish to be free, you must accept the truth it has revealed." Chris's eyes widened, tears welling up. Could this really be forgiveness? A chance to start over? He reached out a trembling hand and touched the blade's edge, feeling a strange warmth instead of cold steel. A glow spread through his arm, moving into his chest, and he felt the weight of his lies lifting, piece by piece. It was as if every secret he'd ever hidden was being peeled away, leaving him bare but finally honest. The nobles in the room watched in awe as the transformation took place. The queen's advisors whispered among themselves, but none dared to interrupt. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Queen Camilla watched, her expression calm and knowing. She had seen countless liars, countless traitors. Some she had punished without mercy, but here, now, she saw a spark of something different, a desire to change, to be better. When the glow faded, Chris stood, his shoulders straighter, his eyes clearer than before. "Thank you, my queen," he said, his voice trembling but steady. I promise I will never betray your trust again." Queen Camilla nodded, her blade now resting at her side. "See that you don't," she said, her tone softer but still edged with warning. "Truth is a fragile thing, Chris Pratt. Guard it well." She turned away, the folds of her cloak sweeping behind her like the wings of a great bird. The court murmured softly, the tension easing as the queen returned to her throne. Chris stood for a moment, taking in the enormity of what had happened. He had come here thinking he could fool her, but instead he had been given a second chance, a rare and precious gift from the queen's Camilla Blade. And in that grand hall, under the storm's watchful eye, a new chapter began, not only for Chris, but for the truth itself. The storm outside finally began to fade, leaving behind a stillness that felt both peaceful and heavy with expectation. Inside the royal chamber, the queen's court was abuzz with quiet whispers, each noble trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Chris Pratt stood to the side, his head bowed, a changed man from the one who had entered earlier. The weight of his lies had been lifted, but the path ahead remained uncertain. Queen Camilla sat back on her throne, the Camilla Blade resting on her lap. Her eyes, though softer now, still carried the weight of 1,000 secrets. She knew that one man's confession was only the beginning. Deceit ran deep in the kingdom, and Chris was not the only one who had come with hidden agendas. Her mind drifted to the many visitors who had tried to manipulate her court, weaving their half-truths and false promises. Each one had thought they could outsmart her. Each one had underestimated the power of the Camilla Blade. She leaned forward, her gaze fixed on Chris. "Your journey does not end here," she said. Her voice was calm, but carried a note of challenge. "You have been given a second chance, but you must now earn the trust you so carelessly threw away. You must show the people of this kingdom that you are worthy of the truth." Chris lifted his head, meeting her eyes with a new determination. "I understand, my queen," he said. His voice was steadier than before, though the tremble of uncertainty lingered at the edges. "But where do I begin? How can I prove that I've changed?" Queen Camilla's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "You will start where your lies first took root," she said. "You will return to the villages you deceived with your stories and set things right. You will speak the truth to those who trusted you. Only then can you hope to heal the wounds you caused." Chris felt a wave of guilt and relief wash over him. The thought of facing those he had misled terrified him, but it also felt like the only path forward. "I will do it," he promised. "I will make this right." A murmur of approval spread through the court, the nobles nodding as if they, too, understood the importance of redemption. Queen Camilla rose from her throne, her cloak flowing like a river of night. She approached Chris and placed the Camilla Blade gently in his hands. "Carry this blade with you," she said. "It will guide you in your quest for truth. Let its light remind you of the honesty you must now live by." Chris stared at the blade, its hilt warm against his palm. He felt its power, not as a weapon of punishment, but as a symbol of hope and integrity. He turned back to the queen. "Thank you, my queen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Go now," Queen Camilla commanded, her tone resolute. "Let the truth you have found here lead you forward." Chris bowed deeply, clutching the blade to his chest. As he turned to leave the chamber, he felt the eyes of every noble upon him, some filled with doubt, others with cautious respect. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. He would face angry villagers, suspicious allies, and the ever-present temptation to fall back into old habits. But with the Camilla Blade at his side, and the memory of the queen's unwavering gaze, he vowed to stay true. As he stepped out into the night air, the storm had passed, leaving a sky full of stars. It felt like a sign, a promise that even in the darkest of times, the light of truth could still find a way. And so, with the Queen's blade in hand and a new resolve in his heart, Chris Pratt began his journey of redemption. Chris Pratt left the royal chamber with the Camilla Blade secured at his side, its hilt warm and comforting in his grasp. The night air was cool against his face, and the scent of rain still clung to the cobblestone streets. Every step he took felt like a step into a new life, but he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his chest. Redemption was not just about carrying a magical blade. It was about confronting the lies he had planted and facing the people he had wronged. He made his way through the winding alleys of the city, heading toward the small village of Asterbrook, the first place where his deceit had taken hold. The villagers there had once looked up to him as a hero, believing every exaggerated story he spun. Now, he feared their disappointment would cut deeper than any blade. The closer he got to Asterbrook, the heavier his heart became. As he crossed the wooden bridge that led into the village, memories flooded his mind. The night he had first arrived, the cheers that had greeted his tales of adventure, the way the children had clung to his every word. He had felt powerful then, unstoppable. But now, as he stepped into the village square, he felt small and vulnerable. The square was empty at this hour, lit only by a single lantern near the well. He decided to wait until morning, knowing that the truth needed to be spoken in the light of day. Dawn arrived with a gentle breeze, carrying the sounds of roosters and the scent of baking bread. Chris stood at the center of the square, the Camilla Blade resting in its sheath at his side. One by one, the villagers began to gather. Their faces were curious but cautious, eyes wide with surprise at seeing him again. A few of the elders crossed their arms, their expressions hard as stone. Chris felt their stares like 1,000 tiny daggers, but he stood his ground. He cleared his throat, his voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "People of Asterbrook," he began, "I have come here today to speak the truth." A hush fell over the crowd. "I lied to you. I told stories that weren't true. I made myself look like a hero when I was just a man afraid of being forgotten. I wanted your praise, your trust, your love, but I did not earn it honestly." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and a few villagers exchanged glances. Chris saw hurt and confusion in their eyes, but he pressed on. "I stand here today, not as the hero I pretended to be, but as the man I truly am. I am here to ask your forgiveness and to make things right. I carry the Camilla Blade, given to me by Queen Camilla herself. It is a symbol of truth, and I promise to use it not to hurt, but to heal. I will tell you the real stories, the good and the bad, so that together we can rebuild the trust I shattered." A small voice rose from the crowd, belonging to a young girl with bright eyes. "Why should we believe you now?" she asked, her tone innocent but firm. Chris swallowed hard and knelt down to meet her gaze. "Because I have nothing left to hide," he said, his voice steady. "The Camilla Blade has shown me the cost of lies, and I will never walk that path again." The villagers murmured among themselves, some skeptical, others curious. Slowly, an old woman stepped forward. She placed a trembling hand on Chris's shoulder and looked into his eyes. "Let's hear your true stories," she said. "Maybe then we can find forgiveness." Chris felt tears sting his eyes. He stood taller, knowing that the journey had only just begun. With the Queen's blade at his side, he would now walk the path of truth, one step at a time. Chris Pratt spent the next few days in Asterbrook, moving from home to home, sharing meals with the villagers, and telling the real stories of his life. He spoke of his failures, his regrets, and the times when he had let his fear guide his actions. The villagers listened with quiet patience, some leaning forward with curiosity, others crossing their arms with doubt. But as the days passed, a shift began to take hold. He found himself sitting by the fireside with families he had once entertained with tall tales. Now he spoke with honesty, telling them how he had felt small in a world that demanded greatness. He spoke of the pressure he had put on himself to always be the hero, the fear that if people saw his flaws, they would turn away from him. The more he spoke, the more he realized that his lies had hurt him just as much as they had hurt the people around him. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Chris stood in the village square. A small crowd gathered to hear what he had to say. The Camilla Blade, now a constant companion, rested in its sheath at his side. He drew it slowly, the blade gleaming in the twilight. "This blade," he said, lifting it high, "reminds me of the price of deception and the power of truth. Queen Camilla trusted me with it, and I must honor that trust by being honest with you all." A hush fell over the crowd. Chris lowered the blade and continued. "I can't promise to always have the right answers. I can't promise to never fail, but I can promise that I will never again hide the truth from you. From now on, my stories will be real. The good, the bad, and everything in between." A young boy stepped forward, his eyes wide with wonder. "Will you teach us how to be brave like you?" he asked. Chris knelt down and ruffled the boy's hair. "Being brave doesn't mean pretending to be perfect," he said. "It means facing your mistakes, telling the truth even when it's hard, and never giving up on becoming a better person." The boy smiled, and the villagers began to nod and murmur their approval. An old man stepped forward, his cane tapping the cobblestones as he approached. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong," he said, his voice rough but kind. "You've earned another chance here. Don't waste it." Chris felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you," he whispered. Over the next weeks, Chris worked alongside the villagers, helping repair roofs, tending gardens, and sharing meals in crowded kitchens. He learned their names, their stories, and their struggles. He found himself caring about their hopes and fears, no longer needing their praise to feel important. The Camilla Blade, always at his side, reminded him of the promise he had made to the Queen and to himself. One night, as the stars blazed overhead, Chris stood at the edge of the village, looking back at the homes he had come to love. He knew that his journey was far from over. There were still villages he had lied to, still people who deserved his honesty. But Asterbrook had given him a start, a place to prove that he could change, that the truth could heal even the deepest wounds. With a deep breath, he turned toward the next village on his path, the Camilla Blade at his side, and a new strength in his heart. He was no longer the man who had lied to gain admiration. He was the man who would walk the road of truth, no matter how long or hard it might be. Chris Pratt traveled for days, visiting one village after another, each with its own unique story and set of wounds that needed healing. In some places, people met him with open arms, eager to hear his real stories and to share their own. But in other villages, he was met with suspicion and cold stares. His lies had spread far, and not everyone was ready to forgive. Yet each time, he stood before them with the Camilla Blade at his side, promising honesty and letting his actions speak louder than his words. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Chris arrived in a small village called Fernbrook. It was a quiet place surrounded by thick forests, and its people were known for being proud and fiercely independent. He had once told them grand tales of heroism, how he had single-handedly fought off bandits and saved entire caravans from disaster. Those lies had earned him their admiration, but now they were the hardest to face. As he entered the village square, he saw familiar faces, each marked by disappointment and anger. He took a deep breath, drawing on every lesson he had learned in Asterbrook. He held the Camilla Blade in front of him, its polished surface reflecting the worried expressions of the villagers. "People of Fernbrook," he began, his voice carrying in the still air, "I have come to ask your forgiveness. I lied to you, and I dishonored the trust you placed in me. I stand here today, not as the hero I once claimed to be, but as a man who is ready to speak the truth." A hush fell over the square. An older woman stepped forward, her eyes sharp as flint. "Why should we believe you now?" she demanded. "Your words have hurt us before. What makes this time any different?" Chris lowered the blade, feeling the weight of her question. "Because now I have seen what lies can do," he said. "They divide people, they create pain, and they destroy trust. Queen Camilla gave me this blade to remind me of the power of honesty. Every time I look at it, I remember the promise I made to her, and to myself." He looked around, meeting the eyes of every villager who would meet his gaze. "If you give me the chance, I will prove to you that I have changed. I will work with you, help you, and share only the truth, no matter how small or unimportant it might seem. Let my actions speak for me this time, not my stories." Silence hung in the air for a long moment. Then a young man stepped forward. "We could use help rebuilding the bridge over the river," he said quietly. "The last flood washed it out, and it's made travel dangerous." Chris felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest. "Then I'll help you," he said without hesitation. "We'll rebuild it together." The villagers watched him, their eyes filled with cautious curiosity. Slowly, others stepped forward with small tasks and requests for help, repairing roofs, clearing fields, fixing the old water mill. Each offer was a sign that maybe, just maybe, they were willing to give him a second chance. As he worked alongside them in the days that followed, Chris found a sense of purpose he had never known before. It wasn't the applause he once craved, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing he was helping to build something real. The Camilla Blade rested by his side, a silent promise that he would never again let lies define him. And so, in Fernbrook, Chris Pratt continued his journey, one day at a time, one truth at a time, determined to show the world that even the deepest lies could be washed away by the honest work of a changed heart. Weeks passed in Fernbrook, and Chris Pratt found himself slowly becoming part of the community he had once deceived. Every day, he worked alongside the villagers, lifting heavy beams for the new bridge, clearing paths in the forest, and sharing simple meals by the riverside. Though the work was hard and his hands were calloused, he felt a sense of peace he had never known before. Each time he felt the weight of his past creeping in, he touched the Camilla Blade at his side, letting its smooth handle remind him of the promise he had made. One afternoon, as he was helping rebuild the bridge's final section, a voice called out from the other side of the river. "Chris Pratt!" the voice shouted, filled with urgency. Chris turned to see a young boy, no older than 10, racing down the path, his face red with worry. "Chris, there's trouble at the mill." Chris dropped his tools and rushed across the nearly finished bridge, his boots pounding on the wooden planks. "What's happened?" he asked, catching his breath. "It's a fire," the boy cried. "It started in the storage room, and now it's spreading. The mill might burn down." Without a moment's hesitation, Chris dashed toward the mill. Smoke rose from its roof, and villagers were already gathered, forming a line to carry buckets of water from the river. Chris grabbed a bucket and joined the line, his arms moving fast as he passed the water from hand to hand. Flames danced in the windows, and the air was thick with the smell of burning wood. "Everyone, stay calm," Chris shouted, his voice strong and clear. "We can save the mill if we work together. Keep the water moving, and don't let the flames spread." The villagers responded with determination. Even the smallest children joined the effort, carrying small cups of water and soaking towels to fight the fire. Chris moved quickly, guiding the villagers with quiet authority. He felt the sweat on his brow, the heat on his skin, but he didn't stop. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the air as one of the wooden beams gave way. Part of the roof collapsed, sending a shower of sparks into the sky. Chris shielded his face and coughed, but he didn't run. Instead, he ran into the mill, searching for anyone who might still be inside. "Is anyone here?" he shouted over the roar of the flames. A faint voice answered from the back room. "Help!" Chris pushed through the smoke, his heart pounding. He found a young woman crouched near the floor, her eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, he scooped her up in his arms and carried her out into the fresh air. Cheers rose from the crowd as he emerged, the woman clinging to his neck. "Thank you, Chris," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. Chris nodded, his chest heaving. "You're safe now," he said, setting her down gently. "The rest of you, keep fighting the fire. We can't let it win." For hours they worked, and finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the last of the flames died out. The mill was damaged but still standing. The villagers, exhausted but proud, gathered around Chris. He looked at them, soot-covered, bruised, but smiling, and felt something warm in his chest. "You saved us," the village elder said, stepping forward. "You didn't just tell stories this time, you acted." Chris met his eyes and felt tears well up. "I did what I promised," he said softly. "I chose the truth, and I'll keep choosing it every day." And as the villagers cheered, Chris felt the weight of his old lies finally lift. The Camilla Blade glowed faintly in the twilight, a reminder of the man he had become. The night after the fire, Fernbrook glowed with the warm light of small fires and lanterns. The villagers sat around the smoldering remains of the mill, sharing stories of what they had lost, but also of what they had saved. Chris Pratt sat among them, feeling a sense of belonging he had never expected to find. The Camilla blade rested in its sheath at his side, its presence like a quiet guardian. As the stars spread across the sky, Queen Camilla arrived. She rode in on a dark horse, her cloak billowing behind her like a river of night. The villagers stood and bowed, but Chris remained seated, too exhausted to move. The queen dismounted and walked slowly toward him, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. "Chris Pratt," she said, her voice carrying the calm strength that had always set her apart. "Word of your deeds has reached my court. I came to see for myself." Chris rose to his feet, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of relief and humility. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice quiet but steady, "I tried to do what you asked. I tried to prove that I could be better." The queen regarded him thoughtfully, then turned to the villagers. "What say you?" she asked. "Has this man earned your trust?" A hush fell over the crowd. The village elder stepped forward, his eyes kind but stern. "He has," the elder said. "He came here not with grand stories, but with hard work and honesty. He stood by us in our darkest hour. He's earned a place among us." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd, and Chris felt tears sting his eyes. He turned back to the queen. "I owe everything to the Camilla Blade," he said. "It taught me that the truth matters more than any story." Queen Camilla nodded, her eyes glinting in the firelight. "It is true that the blade reveals lies," she said, "but it cannot make a man choose honesty. You did that yourself." She reached out and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You have proven that even the deepest wounds can heal, and that even the worst liar can find redemption." She drew the Camilla blade from its sheath and held it aloft. Its surface gleamed like the first light of dawn. "Chris Pratt," she declared, "you are no longer a wanderer seeking forgiveness. You are now a guardian of truth, a servant of this kingdom, and a friend to its people." Chris felt his chest swell with pride and gratitude. He knelt before her, and she gently placed the blade in his hands. "Use it well," she said. "Wherever there is darkness, bring light. Wherever there are lies, bring truth." The villagers cheered, their voices rising like a single powerful song. Chris rose, feeling the weight of the blade and the trust that came with it. He knew that his journey was far from over. There would always be challenges and temptations, but he also knew he was no longer alone. Queen Camilla mounted her horse and turned to face him one last time. "The kingdom is watching, Chris Pratt," she said. "Make us proud." He nodded, his eyes shining. "I will, my queen." As she rode off into the night, Chris turned to the villagers. Their faces were tired but hopeful, and he felt a deep sense of purpose. With the Camilla blade in hand, he would walk the path of truth, one village at a time. And though the road ahead was uncertain, he knew that with honesty, courage, and the strength he had found within himself, he could face whatever challenges lay ahead.